He is. This is February 20th, 1996. Interview with Frida Rabenstein. Interviewer Charlotte Rettinger. Lawrence, New York, USA, in English. February 20th, 1996. Interview with Frida Rabenstein. Maiden name Joseph, J-O-Z-S-E-F.
When you're ready.
My name is Charlotte Rettinger. Today's date is February 20th, 1996. I'm conducting an interview with Frida Rabenstein in Lawrence, New York. Hello.
Hi,
Hi. Could you state your name, please?
my name is Frida Rabenstein,
Would you spell it for us?
F-R-I-D-A-R-A-B-E-N-S-T-E-I-N.
Thank you. And your maiden name was?
My maiden name is Joseph. This is J-O-Z-S-E-F.
Mm-hmm. And did you have any other names?
Well, I have a nickname. People call me by the name Fritzi.
Uh-huh. How would you spell that?
F-R-I-T-Z-I.
And what is your date of birth?
September 5th, 1927.
And that would make you how old now?
68, I believe.
Okay. We're going to start, and I would like to ask you about your life before the war, when you were a child. And could you begin by telling us something of your parents, their names and...
Well, my father's name was Solomon Joseph. My mother's name was Sima Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
We were 10 sisters and brothers.
10?
I had 10, 7 boys and 3 girls. I had a very, very happy childhood. Beautiful life was, for us, was pretty good. My father had a mill. And life was very, very beautiful till 1944, when the real problems got started.
Okay. Let's take some time and tell us about your life before the war. Particularly, could I begin by asking you about your father's mill?
Well, my father had a mill, and in the mill they made oil from sunflower oil, and from corn they made corn flour, and also flour from what you bake bread, what you call for bread.
For bread.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And did your father own this mill? Or?
Yes, we owned the mill.
Mm-hmm. And who else worked at the mill?
Well, my brothers helped my father all along, but in 1942-43, all the boys were taken to do labor in labor camp. And when I couldn't continue no more in 1943 my schooling, I helped my father a lot, because he wasn't allowed to go in the mill either. They took away the permits from all the Jews, from all their businesses.
Right.
So he wasn't allowed to go in, so I was his front.
Okay. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. But now I'd like to understand something about your life before the war. You went to school, you said?
Yes, I went to school, and I finished middle school. And when I started high school, I was interrupted because they only permitted 6% of Jews. Although I was a top student, I wasn't allowed to continue. So my father hired private teachers who came home to tutor us.
Mm-hmm. Right. Did your parents belong to a synagogue at that
Yes,
time?
my parents were Orthodox, and they belonged to a synagogue. My little village only had about 60 Jewish families. We had 2 synagogues, and we belonged.
What was the name of your village?
Velika Kopanja.
Would you spell that, please?
V-E-L-I-K-A. Velika Kopanja, separate word, K-O-P-A-N-I-A.
And what country was this in?
Well, at the time I was born, it was Czechoslovakia, but in 1938 it became Hungary.
Okay. And were your parents from this village?
No, my father was from a village maybe 15 miles away, was called Verice.
Spell it.
Verecce, Verice. And my mother came from a town near the Polish border, which was called Verecke. Similar, but they were quite far one from the other. Verecke was Veretcke, Verecke.
And that was Czechoslovakia?
That was the same. It was Czechoslovakia, and it became in 1938 Hungary.
Do you know how your parents met?
I tell you, my mother was a widow with 2 boys, and my father was a widower with 4 boys. My mother's husband died in World War I. My father's first wife died in childbirth with a 4th son, and they got married. How they met? I know that I had an aunt. My mother's brother was married to my father's sister. So I guess she was the matchmaker. I don't know, but it was like a double marriage.
Right. So that there were 6 children from other spouses.
Well, it was mine, yours, and ours.
Right. So those 6, and then your parents had 4 children together?
I was the oldest from together.
Uh-huh. So that, who else came after you?
I have a sister that lives in Brooklyn today, and 2 little brothers who were killed in Auschwitz.
Right. And what is your sister's name?
My sister's name is Berta, B-E-R-T-A.
And her last name?
Brecher, B-R-E-C-H-E-R. But she also has a nickname, and they call her Gabby.
Gabby?
Yeah.
And your 2 little brothers, what were their names?
My 2 little brothers, one was named Hersch Dewitt. Hersch I would spell H-E-R-C-H. David, D-A-V-I-D, David, Hersch David. And the little one was Eliyahu, which would be E-L-Y-A-J-U, Eliyahu. I don't know if I spelled it right.
Okay. This gives us an idea.
Yeah.
And now those were your full brothers and sister.
Right.
Now, who were the older children? What were their names?
The oldest her name was Dvojra, D-V-O-J-R-A, Dvojra. She was the oldest. She passed away in Bergen-Belsen after we were liberated a few weeks later.
We'll talk about that a little later, how you found out about that. And there were then sons?
Yeah, then was my father's son, was the oldest one was Ignaz, I-G-N-A-C-Z, Ignaz.
Yes.
And then was Benjamin, Joinason Benjamin, Joinason, the first name, Jonathan actually they called it. Joinason is J-O-J-N-E-S-E-N, Benjamin.
Right.
B-E-N-J-O-M-I-N, Benjamin. Okay.
Right. Were there any others?
Yes, and then there was Pinchas, P-I-N-C-H-A-S.
Right. And that was
That's
all
it.
of them? Those are all 10 children?
No, then my mother's 2 boys.
Uh-huh. And who were they?
There was the oldest one was Chaim, C-H-A-J-A-M, Chaim. And the second one's name was Dov, D-O-V, Dov.
Right. What was their last name?
Friedman.
Friedman. Okay. So it was a big family you had then.
Yes, very big family, but very happy one.
Tell me, you had aunts and uncles?
Yes, my mother had 2 brothers and a sister, and my father, they were 9, so he had 7 sisters and 1 brother besides him.
And lots of cousins?
Cousins my grandmother used to say that she has 66 grandchildren. And I don't know, there was maybe 10 or 12 great-grandchildren already. but there's nobody left practically.
Right. What was your life like as a youngster before the war on a daily basis?
Well, I was a very nice life. We went to school.
Right.
In the morning we went to public school, and the afternoon when we came home we had to take Hebrew lessons. And then we just had good times. You know, I was a kid. We were out either with friends or we helped around the house. We had to do some chores. Everybody had to do something. But basically the family was always together.
As far as you know, did you experience any anti-Semitism before the war?
I didn't experience no anti-Semitism till 1941. In 41 it started a little bit when the Nazi party started in Hungary. They took a lot of Jews from our village and took them to Poland because they said that their grandparents were born in Poland. Everybody had to have papers to identify themselves that their great-great-great-grandparents were also born here and not, let's say, where it was Poland or Russia or whatever. If they were born in, or even an American citizen, they took away. We had a neighbor who came back. He was here and came back to his wife and children, and he was an American citizen. They took him to Poland and they killed the whole family. So in 1941 it started to be, and they took away the permits for the businesses from all the Jews, and things started to be difficult.
Right. Is there anything about your life before the war that you'd like to tell us about? That something particularly meaningful that your family did or enjoyed?
Well, I tell you, there's nothing that I could tell you that we enjoyed, because life was pretty routine. But we had a lot of, you know, the boys went away, and it was a lot of sadness already after 41, because the boys went away, and there was not in particular any very happy time, because we knew that we really don't know what tomorrow will be. It was already like we were scared of tomorrow. But life was still good. We still had everything what we needed.
In 41?
Between 41 and 44.
Mm-hmm. And when you say the boys went away?
They took them to labor camps.
Do you know which
All
ones?
the Jewish boys had to go. I don't know, they took them from city to city. I don't remember already, but we used to get mail. They were here a few weeks, and wherever they took them to the front to help out the soldiers, but they were doing the diggings and things like that. But all the Jewish boys from 19 on were taken away to labor camp.
Mm-hmm. You don't know what cities or camps?
I wouldn't remember.
Right. And so that these were all of your older brothers?
All my brothers, right.
They all went? They were all 19 or over at that
Right.
time? And then once...
Except for my two little brothers.
Right, well, they were...
Yeah, they came into Auschwitz.
So that you lived in relative comfort? I say
Yes, we
comfort.
lived in quite well comfort.
Uh-huh.
There was a lot of poverty because most men, let's say they took men away up to the age of 50. And if a man left a wife with a lot of kids, there was no support. There was no, it was a lot of poor people all around us too, because my father didn't go because once he was older, and second, he had polio as a child and he limped on a foot. So he was cured, but he was dragging one foot a little bit. And for that reason, he was home. But most men had to leave their families and go away to work, to labor camp. And that created tremendous poverty in many households.
Right. When did this situation change?
It didn't change, because in 1944, when they took us to the ghetto, it just got from bad to worst.
Right. What happened? How did it come about that you left your house and went to the ghetto?
Well, it was the last day of Passover, and my father was called out by one of the policemen, and he said to him, "If you give me some jewelry, I'll tell you a secret, but if you're going to reveal this secret for anybody, I'll come back and I'll kill you and your children. And my father took some of the jewelry he gave him, and he took him into the next room, and he said, we have orders 4 o'clock in the morning to round up all the Jews in this village, take them to the synagogue backyard, and from there to the next town in the ghettos. I just want you to know it, but you're not allowed to tell it even for your wife. Well, of course, my father didn't tell it, but then somehow when the holiday ended, he was crying. He was crying. And then they decided they're going to hide me. They're going to send me away to a monastery. And my younger sister, they said goodbye to me, and they sent me away to this man came to pick me up, and he promised to deliver me to the Catholic nuns. And they liked me. They used to come to the mill. They knew me, that they were going to keep me there till after the war. And this man took me 12 o'clock at night and hid me in a haystack. But in the morning when he went to church, they announced that anybody hiding any Jew, and if they're going to find out, will be automatically killed. He panicked, and he went over to the policeman, and he said, look, I'll tell you where a Jew is hiding, but promise that you're not going to kill her or me. And they came to look for me. They knew exactly where I was, so they started calling me, and I was afraid to come out. But finally I did come out, and they surrounded me, a few of those policemen. And they said, why did you do this? Now we'll have to kill you. I said, I only did it because I want to live. And I know wherever you're taking me, I don't know if you're going to come back. So he walked me home, and as I came home to my house, my father had a little beard, you know, but they were just cutting that off. And my father saw me. He became gray like him. I never seen a man changing color. His hair got gray in one day from the shock. And they said, oh, Mr. Joseph, we got your daughter back, but if you're not all here by 5 o'clock this afternoon, we come back and we'll kill her. You didn't keep your promise. So my father called my sister back, and we all went into the ghetto. That was the only time that I was hiding. It was only a half a day, really. From then on, there was no place to hide.
Where was your sister hiding at that
By
time?
somebody else. That other guy didn't give her away. But now she had to come out because he says, if I'm not going to account for all your children, then I'll kill Fritzi, calling me. So my father didn't want that to happen, so we went to get her back.
Why don't you take a tissue, you'd be more comfortable. So even though she hadn't been uncovered, he felt...
We had to call her back because they came to count us. They knew, we had to account for every child.
And they knew how many there were?
Yeah, they knew. It's a small village and everybody knows everything. So that was that. Then we went into the ghetto.
What year was that, Mrs. Ravenstein? What year?
1944, April 15th.
April 15th, so it was relatively late in the war.
Yeah.
April 15th. So it was the day after Passover?
Yeah, one day after Passover. That year, that was the end of Passover.
Right. So then they came back at 5 o'clock and they counted and you were all there. What happened next?
Then we had to all, they said everybody can take 20 kilo, which I don't know how many pounds that is, maybe 15 pounds. We can take along whatever belonging we want, up to that amount, and that we should give all the jewelry and monies, whatever we have, to the police people. And we had to pack up, and then they put us on a wagon and they took us to the ghetto.
Now, were these the Hungarian police, the local
Yes, this
police?
was Hungarian police.
Were there Germans in town at that?
No, no Germans. No, there was the... But the Germans occupied Hungary. But they already, like, the Germans gave orders to the Hungarian police to round up the Jews. Because we were Hungary since 1938. And nothing, I mean, they didn't... I mean, things weren't so good, but they left us at peace. And then the Germans came in the beginning of March to Hungary, and April already they rounded up all the Jews.
So these were now the Hungarian police?
Hungarian police and German orders.
Right. And now how did you get from your home to the ghetto?
By horse and wagon.
Whose horse and wagon was it?
Well, we happened to have our own that they took, like it was like a, you know what they have in Central Park, those wagons, they call them, something like that, with 2 horses. So then they took them away from us. My father stayed home because the town signed, 500 people signed petition that he has to stay for 20 extra days to teach the people because they're not going to have bread. The mill has to go on. And he was still giving advice how to run the mill, even though he wasn't allowed to go in, but he was behind. If something broke down or something, they came to him.
Right.
So he stayed the only Jew in the village for 20 days. And we left without my father. And we went to this ghetto called Sevlush, which is 10 miles from my town, and we were put into a house, I think 4 families to a room. We were all just like herrings sleeping on the floor.
How do you spell the name of this ghetto?
Sevlush. Sevlush is S-E-V-L-U-S, Sevlush.
I want to just go back for a minute to during the period before you left your home to the ghetto, and you had said before that you worked at the mill?
Yeah, I helped my father.
Yeah,
I said that before for you. Yeah.
yeah, but tell me what you did.
Well, I tell you, my father wasn't allowed to go in. So you know the mill, when people come to make flour, you weigh it, and you have to take, instead of money, you took a certain percentage of that wheat, and then you had to turn it into the government. It was because it was rationed, and I ran the books. There was everything had to be written down,
Right.
and they used to come every few weeks to inspect if everything was correct. So I was actually like a bookkeeper and everything. My father's, he gave me instructions if I had a problem or something, I went out to ask him. But I was working in there and taking care on the proceeds as they came in.
So then you
My
and-
father also had a stone mill, where they grind stone. We had I don't know how they call it, where with dynamite they break off stones from a, and then they use them to make streets.
Like a quarry?
Yes, I don't know what they call it
I
here.
think it's a quarry, yeah.
And that we had, and they take them by train. They took away the stones for streets, for making streets. And I used to go there measuring it and figuring out how many tons. I mean, my father taught me, and I did it. He always used to say he doesn't know what he would do without me, because he never thought I was going to handle it. I was very young.
How old were you?
Well, I was 15, going to 16.
Right. Very young. And this
But the
time-
war teacher, you grew up very fast.
Yes. And all of your older brothers were away?
I
but
mean,
they-
nobody, I was the oldest
You were
home.
the oldest home. So that your father then stayed on for 20 days.
He stayed on for 20 days, and he heard how terrible we had it in the ghetto, that there were 4 families in one room, and there was no hygiene. I mean, it was just this despicable conditions and everything. So he bribed again the policemen, in this town, because my father was like the most well-off people in that area, And they came by taxi this time. We paid for a taxi, and they took us to a different ghetto, a different town where my grandparents were. And all my aunts and uncles, my father wanted to be together with his parents, because my grandparents were still alive.
Where was this ghetto?
That's Hust, C-H-U-S-T, Hust.
And was it far from the original?
No, it was maybe 20 miles. And in that ghetto, in this Jewish cemetery, there was a room where you prepared the dead for some. That room we got. We slept in the cemetery. But it was a big room, and it was much better because we were all, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, we all had place. It was a huge room. It was in the spring, so, like it wasn't a real building. It was just like a shack. But we slept, that's where we stayed for 4 weeks.
How did you get food?
There was only the food that we took along. We couldn't get nothing from the outside. As a matter of fact, my sister, the oldest one, had a baby, and she couldn't nurse the baby, and we couldn't get milk, and that baby died from hunger in the ghetto. She died. She was few months old, and we couldn't even bury her. She died a day before we left the ghetto. That little girl. We couldn't get milk or anything. It was impossible. You couldn't go out, and nobody was allowed in. So for those few weeks, somehow we still had what I don't remember particularly, but probably we lived on really crumbs and things. I mean, there was no food to talk about, or vegetables or anything.
Was there any food in the ghetto you were in before?
No, but we took along potatoes, so we still had, you rationed yourself. You really didn't eat a full meal. You had a potato for lunch, it was a big lunch. That's it.
Right. Was there any sort of community life in the ghetto?
No, I tell you, we were only in the ghetto for about the whole ghetto time of the middle of the April to end of May, which is 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't get even started because this was like a transition. We didn't know that we are going to Auschwitz. But they said they're going to take us to places where we were going to work on a farm. So the Jews, somehow we didn't know what's happening. Nobody heard from Auschwitz. So we all figured we're going to a farm and things we're going to work there, and that's how we're going to live.
There were no people from other parts of Europe coming to Hungary to tell you what was going on?
I tell you, from Poland, some people came and told us, but nobody believed it. It was not to be believed, and we didn't know about Auschwitz. We knew that in Poland they have ghettos,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't know that there is concentration camps. We never heard that word before.
What did you hear them say, the people from
Well,
Poland?
my mother had a sister in Poland, and she was hiding somewhere in Lemberg, and couriers used to come with notes, and we sent money and packages and whatever, that they are hiding, and they are, because if not, you go to a ghetto. And that in Poland they killed a lot of Jews in Majdanek and here and there. But something, we knew and we didn't, like you couldn't believe it. And you don't want to believe it's going to happen here. You just don't want to believe it. As much as we knew, it was unbelievable.
So you heard certain things, but
We
but
heard
you found it
rumors,
hard
but
to
we
believe.
really didn't, life was going on to the best of what we could. But listen, for years in Poland, you hear, but you just can't imagine it and you don't believe it. It's simple as that.
Were newspapers still publishing?
Oh, newspapers, yeah, we read newspapers, but the newspapers, they were censored. You really couldn't believe everything. All they were saying that the Germans were winning here and they were winning there, which they were.
Mm-hmm.
They were going in this country, that country. We got every day a newspaper in my house, and I was reading it. Everybody was into knowing, finding out what's going on. We wanted to know what Roosevelt is doing, and we knew about Eleanor Roosevelt. I remember as a young girl of 15, she was my idol.
Right.
Reading all about what she did, I used to say, gee, this is the kind of woman I'd like to look up to.
Okay, you'll tell me more about that on the next
Yeah.
tape. Okay. Interview with Frida Rabenstein. Interviewer is Charlotte Rettinger, February 20th, 1996. Mrs. Rabenstein, you were just telling me about the newspapers that you had read all during the early part of the war while you were still at your home.
Life was pretty normal yet, except for my brothers being gone and my father couldn't go into the business, but our life was, family life was For me, as a young girl, I didn't feel it that much, you know. I was young and careless and happy, you know, you just
lived your
I
life,
didn't take it as seriously as my mother and father did. They knew about the problems. Young people take it, you know.
So then you went from there to the ghetto. You had your half a day of hiding, and that didn't work out. And then you went to the ghetto with your mother, not your father,
Right.
and your younger brothers and your sister. And from there you went to the second ghetto.
And there we stayed about a month till they threw us into wagons, you know, you know what kind of wagons? Not regular train. It's the wagons that you bring, how do you call it, those, that you deliver food or something, you know, those, a train, you know, but it wasn't
Like
a regular train that you put people into.
Like a boxcar?
A box, yeah.
Okay.
They pushed us in there, about 110 people sitting on the floor.
Did you have to go first to a railroad station?
Yes, we had to walk to the railroad station with our belongings.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put us in there, and I'll never forget when we went to the border to get into Germany. My father looked in, there was a little opening. You know, those trains have little openings on top. There's no windows, but we climbed up to look out. And he says to my mother, you know, we made a terrible mistake. We should have bring along poison and all die together. Now I see the end. The minute he saw going over from Poland to Germany, he says we should have had poison so we could all die together. And that was that. The next day we were in Auschwitz, because Auschwitz was very close to the border, rather on the Polish border.
How long was the train ride?
The train ride was 2 days and 2 nights, because it was standing always, you know. We were all in one, can you imagine, everybody, no bathrooms, no water, no nothing. It was a disaster, but we were together.
There were 6 of you?
My grandparents were there, my aunts and uncles, the whole train, that whole particular compartment was our family. That's what my father wanted, we should all be together. So we were together till Auschwitz. From that 110 people, we came back 5. The rest never came back.
When the train went for 2 days and 2 nights.
Right.
And then what happened?
Then it stopped, and we thought they let us stay there, God knows how long. Anyway, at 12 o'clock at night, they opened the doors. Everybody had to jump down, and they said to leave the packages there. And the German soldiers took over there, and they kept on selecting right and left, right and left. And they selected us, the young people, right, and the elderly people and the children left. We didn't know why. I asked the German soldier, because I speak German, and I asked him why, where are they going? And he said, politely, mind you, answered me, they are going by bus because they're too old to walk, and you'll meet them tomorrow. So we, you know, what we believe. I thought the next day I will see them. So everybody went away without saying goodbye.
Now, who went with you?
Well, my mother came first with us, because she was 52, but she looked much younger. And then my youngest brother came, a German soldier had him by his hand, and he said, find your mother. And he kept on calling, Mommy, Mommy, till my mother heard his voice. He says, he put them together, he says, you go left. And took my mother away. So then the 3 of us, the 3 sisters, remained together, and that was it. Then they took us, they took us to a place where they took off us our clothes.
You walked there?
We walked. And on the way we saw the chimneys and everything, but we had no idea what, we didn't know. And we went in there, and they undressed us naked, and they showered us, and they cut our hair. Everybody, all the women's hair was cut, completely cut to nothing like this. And they threw to everybody a dress and a pair of shoes. If it fitted or don't fit it didn't matter. Everybody, whatever they got, they had to keep. There was no exchange. And we stayed there till the morning. In the morning, they took us into...
Where did you stay till morning?
In that place where they showered us, where they dressed us in this particular building.
Right.
And then they walked us to the Lager C in Auschwitz. And they put us into one of those barracks. They counted us, and they put us into the barracks. And the next morning, I asked the girls that were there from before, the Slovak girls, when are we going to see our parents? And she said to me, your parents? Don't you see the smoke up there? They are already up there in the smoke. I said, what are you talking about? She says, your parents are by now all cremated. We couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe it. But we smelled flesh. You smelled that flesh is burning. And there's nothing you could do. I mean, it was just... But I think that we got one plate of soup a day and a little bread. They took like a pound of bread and they sliced it in 5. And we got a ration. That they drugged us in a way, that there was something in that soup, because we slept a lot. You know, we were like 10 girls to a square. I don't know how big the square was, let's say 3 feet, 4 feet by 4 feet maybe. They pushed in just so we could lay sideways, but 10 girls, and it was like three on the bottom, in the middle, and on top, you know. So they had like 30 girls in one thing. And this was a long room, and every one of them looked like that, the whole line.
What were they made out of?
Wood, plain wood, nothing else. Nothing on them, nothing with them, nothing to cover, nothing underneath, just wood. And they put us in there, and I think we slept a lot. We were drugged. But they used to wake us up 2 o'clock in the morning and take us outside and let us stay there till 6 in the morning and counting us, 5 in a row. And this was twice a day. This was 2 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Standing there, counting that nobody should be missing. Not that we could elope, because it was electric wires all around. It wasn't possible to elope. But this was twice a day. You had to stay there for hours, and they counted us. And then...
Who counted you?
The Germans, the soldiers. They were going around counting 5, 10, 15, 20, like 5 in a row, you know.
Right.
And this was going back and forth for hours. Twice a day. They call it Seelappel. If we wanted to keep us a little bit clean, because there was no toilet or no water in those places where we stayed, so there was one place only in the... So I used to get at 12 o'clock at night to run there and wash myself with cold water, just so that I should have a little cleanliness there. And that was when the ones who couldn't do it later, you know, died from typhus and everything. But you had to keep yourself clean, and you had to run at night, because you couldn't go to a bathroom or anything, only certain hours at night. A whole day you couldn't go.
Where was there a place to use the toilet?
There was one of those barracks was made for that. For the whole lager, that was maybe, I think it has 35 barracks, was one barrack for water and toilet.
And you were allowed to go at night, or was this...
Yeah, we went. I remember we went. We were allowed to go, but I'm telling you, 2 o'clock already, they counted us. But in between, we were like, I think we were doped or something. Our menstruation stopped. We never had it in Auschwitz or any place else. So they said they put some medication into the food, so the woman shouldn't menstruate.
Right. So
Which was a good thing, because we didn't have hygiene anyway.
Right. Did you do anything? You slept and you went to the Appel?
We didn't work. I didn't work in Auschwitz. We just slept, and we were Seelappel, and we got that plate of soup around, I don't know, 6 o'clock at night, and a piece of bread in the morning with a black coffee. We didn't do anything in Auschwitz, not in this particular sea lager that I was.
Right. And you were there then with your sisters?
With my two sisters, yes.
Right.
And then Mengele came and selected groups constantly for work. And finally, in September, it came on our block, because he went like from block to block. He took out girls and he sent all over wherever they needed labor, you know, slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, in September, he was looking for girls with nice hands and beautiful eyes. I don't know for what reason, but that was the thing. He looked at the hands and he looked at the eyes. And he picked us out to send away from Auschwitz. And I remember my sister was separated from me, my older sister, and for a piece of bread, for some reason, we almost got killed for it, but we somehow exchanged with somebody who wanted to go back because the sisters were there. We changed, and she came into our group, and she came with us to Hunts, which they put us into, again, to the same kind of trains, cattle trains,
Boxcar,
and cattle trains, you know, and they took us to Huntsveld.
How long were you in Auschwitz and Sea Lager?
In Auschwitz, I was from end of May till end of September.
Did you get a number?
No. Because we weren't working, we didn't get a number.
And when you said you almost got killed by trading a piece of bread to get your sister in your group?
Well, you know,
What
my
happened?
sister wasn't selected in that group, so like he separated us.
Mm-hmm.
And the group that was going to Huntsveld was standing on this side, and it was a very serious thing to do, to change. But sometimes the will to be together was so strong that we took that chance that even if we get killed, we're gonna like exchange. Somehow I don't remember even how we did it, but we gave the bread to somebody, and she ran over there, and my sister ran back, and the Germans didn't see it for a minute. I mean, it was a chance, because if they see it, they kill you. But we took a chance, and she was with us. She was with us all the time, till after liberation.
So now they took you then, and you went back into these cattle cars?
And they took us to Huntsveld.
Could you spell that?
Huntsveld is Huntsveld, Huntsveld.
Okay. How long a ride was that?
I think about maybe 24 hours.
Not as long
Huntsveld is
as
the
before.
outskirts of Breslau, which is today Poland. That time it was Germany. And it's strictly, the whole unit was only munition factories. And they took all the girls. We had better conditions to that point that we were only we had a little heat, I think, in the building, and we were each in individual little wooden beds.
Mm-hmm.
It was three, you know, like one on top of the other, but each one was separate, like one person per. And we got something to cover ourselves, a blanket. So we thought this was the utmost of luxury after that, you know. And they gave us the same thing. They got us up in the morning, and we went to work for 12 hours. I was filling, what do you call it, what you shoot, when you shoot, what you're using?
A gun?
Not a
Bullets?
gun, bullets. We were filling bullets. I was filling bullets with the powder. I had a machine, and we were pressing, the powder fell in, and we had to press the top to close it. And many times the bullet, I fell asleep because we worked 12 hours one week daytime and one week nighttime. But many times at night, like 2, 3 in the morning, my head used to fall down, and it used to shoot out right next to me, and I really damaged my ear a little bit. They used to come over and give us a good clap. What'd you do? What'd you do? Why you fell asleep? So, and my sister, she couldn't work at night. She used to throw up. And every time she used to throw up, if she didn't sleep at night, they used to beat her up. They used to beat her up, and I used to beg them not to do it. And it was terrible. The night shifts were terrible, because not everybody could, you know, you just don't feel well. You know, tired you were, hungry you were. So, but we worked there. If we would have been liberated there, we would have yet come out good. But once the Russians came closer, January, we start hearing the Russians the bombarding Breslau and bombarding all these factories where we worked. They took us, and January 20th, they told us to pack up. They gave us a bread, and they take the blankets with you, we're gonna march.
Did you have shoes?
We had the shoes, this is a story. We had the shoes what we had, you know, men's shoes, whatever shoes they gave us. My sister, and I took, you know, we had a little straw thing that we laid on, a straw with a straw bag. I took that straw bag and I tied it around my body. Just in case it's very cold, we shouldn't freeze. So we did that, and we took the big blanket on top of us because there was no coats or anything. And they let us do it. They let us take that. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the walking, my sister's sole from the shoe fell down. There's no stockings. And there is snow, maybe 2 feet of snow. It was a tremendous snowstorm. So I took off this, but I tied here that straw thing, and I tied it around her foot. And that actually saved her because she didn't have shoes. And I schlepped her on my back. She was, so it was, that was we call it the Death March.
Which sister was that?
The one that's now in Brooklyn.
Right. And how long were you marching?
4 days and 4 nights.
And you just had the one piece of bread?
That's it, and we were eating the snow. We were licking the snow. I will never forget, they stopped us to rest in the snow. Not that they let us, for at night they put us into the farmer's barn, you know, where the cows are and things. They let us into such barns, and we had to sit down there and sleep, which wasn't bad, because at least you were inside. And one day during the day, it was terrible. I sat down in the snow, and I remember side of the street, and I fell asleep. And I had a beautiful dream, green pastures. And I woke up, and I said to my sisters, I'm not walking any further. I'd let them kill me. I don't care. I can't take it no more. I saw a beautiful thing. And there was a woman, a mother and a daughter, I don't remember her name. She came over to me and she started hitting me on my face. You aren't going to stop. You're too young to die. You're going to march on. I don't care. You're going to march on because I'm going to keep on hitting you. You can't sit down again. Because if I wouldn't have gotten up, then they didn't ask a question. They killed over 1,000 girls on that trip. And we had to cover it with snow. The dead bodies, when that snow melted, they must have found, the people that lived in those villages must have found the bodies. Because everybody was left on the side of the street covered with snow. We were about 1,400 girls. We only got to Gross Rosen about 400. I call that the Death March. And when we got to Gross Rosen, one of the German women were our soldiers, women soldiers. Her skirt was splattered with blood. And she looked at me and she said in German, God damn it, look at that blood all over my clothes. And I said, can you imagine? She killed so many girls on the way, and it was yet, God damn it, she has blood on her clothes. This was women. Because once we left Auschwitz, I never saw soldiers no more, only women soldiers. That they were our, in Hunsfeld, only women were dressed as soldiers, watching us with guns and everything.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I guess the soldiers went to the front, and that was already the last year, and women had to be in the army, so they trained them, and they gave them this, but the women were just as cold-blooded. You gotta be quite cold-blooded to do what they did, to take people and shoot them at random because they can't march anymore. And they went in to sleep in warm rooms and what they did to us was like to animals. So they had to sleep with that. They had to live with it, so I don't know what conscience they had.
So 400 of you arrived at Gross Rosen?
When we got to Gross Rosen was a man's camp. The first time in my life when I saw people frozen standing up, frozen frozen like a stick. The way the man was standing, that's the way he was frozen, and he wasn't alive anymore. He was just frozen to the ground. His shoes probably froze to the earth, so he was standing. I could still see that picture. They were dressed in those stripes clothes. And we saw so many dead people, one on top of the other, one on top of the other, hundreds of them, just frozen to death. They took us in there and they gave us some warm food there. That was the first food we got in 4 days. And they kept us only there a few days, and then they said they can't keep us there because we already heard the Russians coming closer. We heard the shooting. Not only that, we saw the bombs falling. I was standing, see, they used to go in bunkers. We were standing outside, and we used to see as the Allies was throwing down the bombs as they were falling. And I said, we couldn't care less. I said, I wish they would fall on us. I mean, at that point, who wanted to live, really? I mean, I figured it'll be over in a minute, and maybe it's better. But they packed us. We only stayed there a few days, and the whole camp had to be evacuated because the Russians got to that area, and they took us to Mauthausen.
How far away was that?
Mauthausen, but when they took us to Mauthausen, they put us into cattle cars that were open, no clothes, you know, half cars.
What month was this?
That was the beginning of February, end of January. End of January. The 20th started the Dead March. It could have been the end of January. It was snowing on us. It was cold. And I think most people really lost their sanity in that wagon. And every day we threw out the dead people that were dead between us. And frankly, I think we all were not human anymore. If I think back what was going on.
What makes you say that?
Because you have to understand, you stayed in an open wagon, everybody was standing, you couldn't even sit down because it was, and all you did is put out your tongue to get a little snow for water. And every day in that wagon was 4 or 5 dead people laying next to you. And you never know how long you will be alive. And here the Germans were telling us that now we are taking you on top of the mountains and we're all going to kill you because nobody wants you. See, and look at this, the Russians are doing to us and to our children. So we have to kill you because it's not our fault. They're coming here, so we got to get rid of you. By the time we arrived to Mauthausen, we were very few. Most of us were dead.
Were your sisters?
Yeah, we were all together. The 3 of us were sticking together, and we were somehow, miraculously, we were all skeletons, but we were still okay.
Were there ways that you could help each other?
Well, we did. Yes, we did. We helped each other.
And what was
Well,
some
I'd
of the
say,
things?
like my sister, when we had to do some chores and one helped for the other, you know. Being together, 3 of us helped the survival. But sometimes there were sisters next to me who one died and all 3 died. They gave up. And once you gave up, you see, also the will to live helped a lot. If I had such a strong, powerful will to live, for some reason, just at that one point when I had that dream, beautiful, I still remember the dream, it was unbelievable, green pastures and everything. And I woke up and I saw what I'm doing. I said, I'm not moving, I want to stay here. Let them kill me, at least I'll have a dream. But we arrived to Mauthausen with those open cattle cars, and they took us and they washed, they gave us showers. We weren't washed in so many days. No bathrooms, no nothing. Okay. You just can imagine how people looked. And in Mauthausen, Mauthausen was a very big concentration camp, mostly for men. There was no women there. So again, they washed us there, they gave us new clothes. They threw a different dress for everybody. They gave my sister a pair of shoes there somehow. And they put us into cattle cars again. And this time, we were in the cars for 2 weeks.
How long were you at Mauthausen?
In Mauthausen, we were again only a few days. And then they took us in cattle cars and we were on the way. I don't know where they wanted to take us, but we got to Nuremberg, to the city Nuremberg. And the Allies was bombing that city. So instead, they left us on the outskirts of the station for 10 days standing there, for 10 days. And of course, because they were bombing the water supply, bombing the electricity, you know, that time the war was already very, I think this country must have already invaded Normandy or something. This was already like February. I don't know. We didn't know what was going on.
This was in 45?
Yeah. So what happened here, there was an old German soldier. Somehow he started crying. God knows if his children are still alive. He was an old man, and he watched us, a man. He said he saw already after a few days, you know, we had nothing, no bread left, because we took like every day a little, and we went to the garbage under the train looking for garbage, and the garbage bills looking for food. And the water that came out from the engine, we had no water to drink. You can imagine what we drank. So he said to me and to another girl, he says, I'll give you my knife, you know, this, what the soldiers carry, this big knife. Go this way in the fields, there is potatoes hidden under the ground. You know, if you put potatoes under the ground, they don't freeze because under the ground is warm. Dig it up and you'll have potatoes. And we went out there like in the early evening and we digged up potatoes, and those potatoes saved us. We ate them dirty. I mean, we couldn't wash them, just the way they came from the ground. We sliced them up. Somebody had a knife, a little knife. We sliced them up. And I said at the time, every Passover, if I ever going to be free, we're going to have raw potatoes on the table, because a lot of people were safe with the raw potato. And those raw potatoes kept us going. If not those potatoes, we would have been dead, because they absolutely didn't give us food. And then everybody went there. I mean, he let us go somehow. He kind of, maybe he knew it was the end, or maybe he realized maybe his children are hungry somewhere. And then when we got into when finally 10 days later, they said they're taking us further, they announced that they're taking us that this time they're going to exterminate us.
They announced it? They
announced it, yeah. This is the last trip. Nobody wants you, and we have nowhere to go anymore because the Americans and the English and the Russians are closing in on us, and we're going to exterminate you. We're going somewhere where we're going to kill you. What do you think we said? I said, Shema Yisrael, we're all ready. Take us. It was just like, you know, at this stage of the game, you didn't care.
You left Mauthausen and you were on this train, and then you went to Nuremberg?
We passed Nuremberg, so
okay.
We stayed in the train in Nuremberg for 10 days.
Okay, in the train. What kind of car was this? Was this a boxcar or the open car?
A boxcar.
This was a closed car? Okay. And there were no toilet facilities, anything like that?
No water, no food, no nothing. Mm-hmm. And they were bombing the city day and night. The Americans were bombing. We saw the planes coming. They were so low. And I saw the bombs falling, and then the German soldier said, you see, he says, they are doing it to you. We don't want to kill you, but they're bombing, we can't give you food and water. They're bombing our water supply and the electricity and everything. So it was always the Allies' fault. Mm-hmm. But they didn't take, at the end we wind up from there, when they continued taking us, we wind up in Bergen-Belsen.
Right, now we'll talk about Bergen-Belsen on the next tape, because this one is over.
Okay.
Interview with Frida Rabenstein, interviewer Charlotte Rettinger, February 20th, 1996. Tape 3. So now, Mrs. Rabenstein, you were on in the boxcar for 10 days outside.
We were 10 days standing in Nuremberg. We were much longer in that boxcar, because till we got to Nuremberg took also a few days, and then it took another few days to get to Bergen-Belsen. We must have been about 2 weeks or so, more even, in that car.
I see.
But in Nuremberg, when we were standing, we were able to go out from the car, because
Right.
they let us out and go in and go out, you know, but nobody was there. They were, the bombing was so immense from the, you know, that they constantly were running in the bunkers and left us alone, thinking